r/no sleep. Posted by u/02321. I work as a PI and a government agent approached me to help with a case. Part 14. Friends. I created a playlist for this series. Link in description. Please check out. I barely recovered from being nearly mauled to death by giant bats when I got picked up by Nick again. He promised it would be a quick job he wanted to clear off his desk. It was a basic checkup on a couple who hadn't been heard from for a day or so. That didn't appear to be enough of a reason to drag in supernatural agents to deal with it, but I didn't ask too many questions and waited until we reached our destination. This time he received a charm to use instead of creating the transportation spell himself. We arrived in front of a house in the middle of nowhere that looked so run down I felt shocked it wasn't abandoned. It stood on a plot of land that at one point was a farm. Overgrown weeds had taken over the lawn and the land surrounding the house. A wooden porch appeared slumped and half rotten. Even though the sun shone bright, the windows were so dark and covered in grime that it was impossible to see inside. I kicked at a rusted car piece hidden in the grass while Nick checked his phone beside me. "Does someone really live here, Nicky?" I asked while the wind blew through the tall grass. "Yes. There has been an outbreak in this area. Normally humans that live in conditions such as these are the ones who are the first to be." Nick was interrupted by a crashing sound. I jumped, nearly tripping over the rusted hunk of metal I kicked at. I looked over to see what newcomer had just arrived by using what I assumed to be a transport spell. A nearly 8-foot tall lizard creature was crawling out of a circle that burned into the ground near us. It crawled on all fours, covering the distance at a blinding pace. A massive tail cracked behind it as it tore the grass as it moved. Standing up, it yelled in a booming voice that echoed. "Agent." I could do nothing to help as the creature wrapped powerful arms around Nick, easily lifting him off the ground. My hand flew to my side and dread overtook my chest as I realized Nick hadn't given back my gun yet. I thought my partner would be crushed to death. Then, I noticed something. This lizard was wearing what looked to be an open suit jacket, and it was wagging its tail. "I have not done a job with you in ages. You've gotten taller," the lizard said happily, though a mouth full of teeth. Friends. I created a playlist for this series. Link in description. Please check out. I barely recovered from being nearly mauled to death by giant bats when I got picked up by Nick again. He promised it would be a quick job he wanted to clear off his desk. It was a basic checkup on a couple who hadn't been heard from for a day or so. That didn't appear to be enough of a reason to drag in supernatural agents to deal with it, but I didn't ask too many questions and waited until we reached our destination. This time he received a charm to use instead of creating the transportation spell himself. We arrived in front of a house in the middle of nowhere that looked so run down I felt shocked it wasn't abandoned. It stood on a plot of land that at one point was a farm. Overgrown weeds had taken over the lawn and the land surrounding the house. A wooden porch appeared slumped and half rotten. Even though the sun shone bright, the windows were so dark and covered in grime that it was impossible to see inside. I kicked at a rusted car piece hidden in the grass while Nick checked his phone beside me. "Does someone really live here, Nicky?" I asked while the wind blew through the tall grass. "Yes. There has been an outbreak in this area. Normally humans that live in conditions such as these are the ones who are the first to be." Nick was interrupted by a crashing sound. I jumped, nearly tripping over the rusted hunk of metal I kicked at. I looked over to see what newcomer had just arrived by using what I assumed to be a transport spell. A nearly 8-foot tall lizard creature was crawling out of a circle that burned into the ground near us. It crawled on all fours, covering the distance at a blinding pace. A massive tail cracked behind it as it tore the grass as it moved. Standing up, it yelled in a booming voice that echoed. "Agent." I could do nothing to help as the creature wrapped powerful arms around Nick, easily lifting him off the ground. My hand flew to my side and dread overtook my chest as I realized Nick hadn't given back my gun yet. I thought my partner would be crushed to death. Then, I noticed something. This lizard was wearing what looked to be an open suit jacket, and it was wagging its tail. "I have not done a job with you in ages. You've gotten taller," the lizard said happily, though a mouth full of teeth. My shoulders tensed. We were facing an unknown danger and our backup wanted to stay behind? We finally had someone who looked as if they could fill in for the strength I lacked, and yet, she refused. "That's fine. We should only be a few minutes." I looked at Nick as if he was crazy. He didn't even acknowledge my expression. He started towards the house and I didn't have any choice but to follow. The gun not a comfort as we made our way up the soft boards of the porch. It smelled of mold and decay. This place should not have any humans living inside. I feared that was the case. When no answer came after he knocked, Nick pushed in the door. It was locked, but he shoulder checked it until it broke open. The smell was worse once the door was open. Stale air poured out. I forced down my gag reflex in order to follow my partner into the dingy front room. Trash and personal belongings were scattered everywhere. Every surface was covered with something. Mail piled up near the front door, and countless pairs of dirty shoes cluttered the walkway. We slowly crept along, looking for signs of life. The only light came from a TV that was turned on without any sound, and a small amount of sunlight that could get through the dirty windows. I didn't know what to expect. This place looked bad enough without the thought of something supernatural lurking in the dark. Nick mentioned it was an infection, but we weren't wearing any protective gear. Something moved across the floor, and I turned to see a massive centipede skittering away from where it was hiding as it heard our footsteps. I got grossed out by it. Nick followed the insect's path, and I could see an odd look in his eyes. Since working with him, I could read his emotions on his neutral face. He looked as if he had found a free puppy. If I wasn't watching him, he would probably have scooped up the thing to take home. This guy really liked weird pets. We carried on to the kitchen, and the smell got even worse. Mold-covered dishes spilled over from the sink. Countless takeout containers littered the table. The stove was covered with more trash, and it was clear this couple hadn't cooked in a while. I looked over the place as some memories came back. When my parents kicked me out, I moved in with my sister, and the time she lived in a place almost as bad as this. It was the only thing we could afford. For a few months, I worked and still stayed in school, all the while coming home to a trash heap of a house. At least I had a roof over my head. Finally, she got a new boyfriend who let us move into his place. I crammed into what was basically a closet, but it was cleaner than the last place. I think if her boyfriend hadn't let us stay with him, if I would still be living in a house similar to this one. When we still didn't see or hear anyone, I followed Nick over to an old wooden door. It led down to a dark basement, and I definitely was not keen on entering it. As we started our way down, every step creaked when we put any weight on it. I was convinced we would break through the step if we stood on the same board at the same time. A very dull light bulb, the only source of light. I kept away from the wooden railing because it looked covered in spider webs. Gregory was still on my mind, and I did not want to see another spider again if I could help it. Nick noticed how I was acting and at first thought something might be going on beside my fear of spiders. I had to tell him I was fine, we could keep going. The basement floor, cold cement. At one point someone tried making the space into a living area, so an old mattress laid on the floor along with some couches and chairs scattered through the space. At first, I'd assumed we would find nothing. The room is still as a grave. Then, I heard something. A rustling sound, almost a crunching, coming from one of the chairs nearby. Nick got out a flashlight for my benefit, and I really wished he hadn't. In the dark gloom, a man sat against an ancient leather chair instead of in it. I started to call out to the older man to see if he was all right. His head raised in a jerking motion, causing my words to get caught in my throat. In the beam of the flashlight, I saw the worst thing I'd ever seen in my life. No wonder why Nick didn't want to be upfront about what we might find. I would have stayed outside with hot sauce if I knew. He wouldn't even be able to drag me inside. Small holes were eaten away from the man's flesh. His eyes were empty and dark. Something else controlling his body. We heard that sickening sound again, causing my entire body to itch. What I saw next made me scream so loud it even made Nick jump. Hundreds, possibly thousands of small insects that looked a hell of a lot like spiders started to pour from every orifice and hole in that man. I ran before my mind even knew it. The terrible truth of what a nest was came to light. I needed to get the hell out of that house. A brief hint of guilt came as I realized I literally abandoned Nick for a few seconds. I flew up the stairs, and let out another sharp scream when my foot fell through the rotting wood. My entire body squirmed thinking about how many spiders and other bugs may now be touching my foot from under the steps. I struggled to get up the stairs as Nick was taking a few steps towards the way out, while not taking his eyes off the infected man. Somehow, that man stood up. More and more of those spiders poured out in such large amounts I heard them moving. I got dizzy from fear. This something I simply could not deal with. Nick really going to get a lecture if we got out of this place in one piece. As the flood of spiders started to race towards two new hosts, Nick wisely decided to haul ass. He leapt up the stairs and grabbed me around the waist. He pulled me free and lifted my body into his arms, knowing I was too frightened to run properly. The mass of spiders reached the steps just as he got back into the kitchen and kicked the basement door closed. As we were leaving the room, I saw spiders pour through the cracks of the door out into the room, looking for us. I was going to scream again from the sight. As he tried making our escape, we bumped into something as we turned a corner. I clutched at Nick, expecting to see another person infected with a nest of spiders. Instead, we came across Hot Sauce, who also let out a scream and took a hold of Nick. For a few seconds, we both were crushed in her arms as she frantically looked around. Our attention was drawn to a flight of stairs to the second floor that we had ignored earlier. Looking down at us was an older woman, dressed in a stained flowery print nightgown. Her eyes were black as well. Her mouth opened, and countless spiders started to pour out and more came from holes they created in her body. I screamed. Hot Sauce screamed. Nick just stood there, not knowing how to deal with the both of us. Then, he quickly got behind the massive screaming lizard just in time. While she still screeched in fear, her chest puffed out. Hot Sauce then started to puke a long stream of what looked to be lava onto the wooden stairs in front of us. Inhaling, she then spewed a long breath of fire, aiming for the spiders and trying to take out the house at the same time. There was nothing worth saving in that place. The heat from her was too much. I started sweating and felt like I'd gotten a sunburn from being so close. Nick ran, still with me in his arms. He kicked down the front door as we stumbled into the grass. I scrambled to find a garden hose. In a state of sheer terror, I started to toss off my shirt and run through the grass feeling filthy. The water poured over my head as I frantically tried to get the imaginary spiders out from my short hair. Nick would have humored me and let me strip down naked to wash off, but I soon got pulled away. Hot Sauce came out of the house, still screaming. She tossed off her jacket, also convinced there were spiders on it. Then, she turned towards the house and let forth a burst of flames so powerful it took out the top half in seconds. It took her a while until she calmed down. Nick found himself with a hyperventilating fire-breathing lizard, and a shirtless partner itching their arms and freaking the hell out. He opened his mouth to speak, but both Hot Sauce and I started talking at once, furious that we needed to even see such a thing. He assured us we weren't in any danger. The insects that infected the couple inside could not survive the heat. Hot Sauce literally rolling herself in flames to make sure nothing survived on her skin. Nick said it was overkill. Nothing was overkill when it came to goddamn spiders. After we both calmed down a little, and the house was burned down to the first floor, Nick got ready to explain. Hot Sauce's flames only burned what she wanted them to. The grass and surroundings of the house remained untouched, so thankfully we weren't going to accidentally cause a wildfire and burn down an entire small town. Clearing a space, Nick started to draw a spell that would ensure no insects would remain on our clothing if any got on us in the first place. It depends on which species has nested, but normally, the eggs take 2 days to hatch. The way to destroy them is heat. This spell will put your body through high temperatures for 30 seconds. That shall be enough to make certain you are not carrying anything back home. Can I do the spell like 10 times? I asked, still scratching at my arms. No. You'll die. Nick responded in a dead tone. He really didn't understand why both of us were overreacting. I let out a long sigh because he'd already forgotten that I told him about my fear of spiders. Nicky, I can't deal with spiders. Why did you think it was okay bringing me into a house like that? They're not spiders. They have 6 legs. I just stared at him, not able to believe our first fight since becoming partners would be over insect leg count. I dropped it and let him hit me with the heat spell. It felt extremely uncomfortable, but better than the alternative. I looked over at the nearly burned down house and felt a hint of remorse for not being able to do anything for the couple. No one should ever have to live like that, let alone die in such a way. How did these two get infected? Was it not hot enough to kill off the eggs? I asked finally. It is uncertain where they picked the eggs up from. There was an outbreak in 4 houses due to the fact that there was an issue with the water being cut off for the past 2 weeks. A main pipe broke, causing some houses to be without. The eggs would have been killed off if the people in any of these houses had been able to have a hot shower before they hatched. It's the reason why the lower income houses are often the ones infected by a nest. They either don't have access to hot water, or cannot take long enough showers. Nick explained, and I felt terrible for the pair before he continued on. These two were shunned by the town due to the fact they fostered children a few years ago and terrible conditions of abuse came to light after one died in their care. No one wanted to speak with them after that incident. Without their income from fostering, their household slowly became run down to the point that we saw it. If we had not arrived in time to destroy the nest they had become, it would risk the insects fleeing the house and infecting the rest of the small town. Now I didn't feel bad about the pair. Sure, I didn't want them to die a terrible death, but their demise had come as a result of their own actions and not a horrible unavoidable random cause. I looked over at Hot Sauce, who was also listening and nodding along. I think she just liked the conversation as a distraction from what she'd seen. Hey, thanks for coming in and helping us. You're as scared of those bugs as I am and yet you still came to the rescue. You're a champ, Frankie. I told her and she looked confused over the nickname. I had to explain my train of thought on that one. There was a brand of hot sauce named Frank's or something, so, her nickname was Frankie. She loved it. I thought Nick might be jealous that I had given someone else a nickname, but he looked a little proud at how skilled his partner was at thinking of names. And she appeared relieved that neither of us mocked her for being so frightened of insects. She'd gotten some negative reactions before when she'd done jobs like this one. Because I didn't judge her, I think we became friends. Supernatural creatures had issues with the idea of having a friend. Their culture was based on a favor system, so they didn't fully understand liking a person enough to do something for them for free. Something like that so extreme it was considered marriage. In fact, she did throw down a marriage offer before she left, which I gracefully refused, and thankfully the massive lizard didn't appear offended. She left with a wide grin and a wave, promising to help us again if we ever needed it. A deep part of myself almost regretted refusing her offer, and I pushed that feeling down further. Working with cute creatures might just making me start questioning my preferences. There was one more house Nick wanted to check on, but he brought me back home for the day. I was very thankful for being able to ditch the rest of the job. I think I spent the rest of the night in the shower. My apartment would be having an increase in hot water usage going forward, that was for sure. I work as a PI and a government agent approached me to help with a case. Part 15. One of the hottest days of the summer, and I had a meeting in my office that lacked air conditioning. The request for the meeting came as a letter instead of a text or email, which I thought was odd. I assumed the letter came from an elderly person who didn't have enough of a grasp of technology to send a message the easy way. But that didn't explain why they didn't call, or how they found my address in the first place. Strange, but I felt too drained from the heat to overthink it. I made the way up the flight of creaky wooden stairs to my rented office. I paused to clean my face of sweat before reaching down to unlock the door, only to find it already unlocked. A surge of fear came through my body, as knew someone obviously would be already inside. I hoped this might be some sort of corporation job and that I wasn't in danger, but I regretted not bringing my handgun with me. It got too hot for jackets, so I no longer had any way to hide the holster from the regular public when I walked from my office to my car. I would just take a peek inside, then leave if I saw anything dangerous. I saw something very dangerous. The creature that stood inside my office waited for me. She had moved my furniture aside to make space for her massive body, her startled face turning towards the door when I opened it. She froze as we both stared each other down. She gave a weak smile filled with teeth. I excused myself for a few seconds to muffle my screaming in the hallway. I got dizzy. The sight of what was in my office forced me to put my hands on my knees and lean over, trying to regain some composure. I had no idea what a thing like her was doing here, or what she wanted. Or hell, how she had even heard about me. But she was polite enough not to eat me the moment we made eye contact, so I should at least hear her out. Opening the door for a second time, I was using all my willpower not to scream as all of her eyes landed on mine. The creature that I saw in my office was a spider woman. I suppose if you could get past the spider back end, she looked attractive. Long black hair that had a purple shine to it reached the floor. She wore a cashmere sweater over her human half, and I could tell she wasn't used to wearing clothing. The material kept riding up and she struggled to keep it down. Her, well-endowed chest almost enough to distract me from her face. She opened her mouth to speak, and no amount of womanly charms would overpower how my skin crawled when I saw her jaw was segmented. It was almost like a hinge, her mouth reaching from ear to ear. Thousands of sharp teeth glittered as she spoke, and two pincers somewhat hidden under her hair near her ears shifted. "I've heard you're a private detective, but that you have also worked with agents to solve cases," she started. Her voice was very sweet. But she was still a spider. A big one. Her spider legs tapped on the hardwood floor nervously. My shoulders tensed at the sight. I was seconds away from running from the room. When I only nodded, she kept speaking. "My name is Charlotte. Last night my son did not return home. He is able to attain a human form, and I fear something has happened to him. I suppose he was off exploring the human side of things. Going to what you humans call, bars. Honestly, if he had just told me what he was doing I wouldn't have minded, but... Without warning, tears stared to come to her two main and larger eyes, and the rest of her smaller ones looked a bit misty. She used her sweater to dab her tears. It soon became a losing battle. My fear went down to a manageable level as she let out hiccuping sobs. I found a box of tissues on my desk and handed it to her. "Take your time and tell me what's wrong," I said, after she apologized for her outburst. "I fear I've been a terrible mother. I was too strict on him, and now my little darling has gone off. I kept telling him we would go together to show him how humans lived, but I was so scared of anything happening I kept putting it off. I suppose he was frustrated and went off on his own, but I just want to know he's safe. He can go off and live his own life away from his overprotective mother. I just want to know he's still alive. I couldn't do anything for her as she started to go into another fit of sobs. It took a little while to get the rest of the information I needed for this job. Her son, Eli, looked to be in his early 20s. He would blend in easily with the bar crowd aside from being a bit naive. He did have access to money because Charlotte earned it from selling her silk to the hunters and the corporation. Her species would take human males as partners. Their sons would be half-breeds, but oddly enough the females didn't have any human DNA passed down. It was normal for the sons to go off into human society after they came of age. Sometimes they stayed with their mothers though. Charlotte wanted to keep her son at home for as long as possible and it backfired. She didn't have a photo of him, but had gotten a drawn portrait done when he was a little younger. It should be enough to give me an idea of what he looked like. Apparently, the sons of this species were extremely handsome, so he wouldn't be all too hard to find. Charlotte could create a transportation spell to bring me to the city she thought he would most likely be in. I thought everything was arranged and got prepared to get started when she stopped me, asking what the payment should be. That turned out to be a difficult conversation. Supernatural creatures lived in a culture of favors where nothing was free. She did have money, but I would rather it go to her son until he could earn his own. That is, if I found him safe. I was perfectly fine doing this job for free, but that was something Charlotte couldn't wrap her head around. In the end, I told her we could put off discussion of payment until a later date, fully knowing I would never ask anything from her. My savings account looking fine, and I didn't have anything planned so I had time to spare. I'm sure there are some people out there that would kill to have a Spider-Woman owe them for something, but I wasn't the type. Although, I fear if Charlotte wasn't part spider, I would maybe take her up on her offer of anything, and did not like that side of myself. I half-jokingly worried that I might end up with a monster girlfriend instead of a regular human if these kinds of jobs kept up. Charlotte dropped me off while remaining unseen herself. She really wanted to go with me but couldn't risk going out in a heavily populated city. Normally humans couldn't see her or interact with supernatural creatures. However, hunters could see them either by their own increased sense for the supernatural or by using magic. Creatures of the night were attracted by big cities to hunt for food, and that attracted hunters. Charlotte did not want to risk coming across one. My fear of spiders aside, she really was a kind-hearted being who did not want to fight a hunter who might want to kill her for just being in the area. I promised her I would do my best, and she left so I could start gathering up information. First, I checked to see what the popular local bars and clubs were located. A sheltered son would probably go to those first. I worried about his safety if he was already out drinking, or who knows what else, for the night. He might be dead in a ditch somewhere from alcohol poisoning or something. Eli was not in a hospital, arrested, or in the morgue. Any supernatural creatures that showed up there would be noticed and swiftly removed either by the corporation or other local agencies. Honestly, I learned a lot from my new client. Even after dealing with the supernatural for a few months now, I didn't know much. I made a list of places to check out when they opened. I killed some time asking around local hotels and motels with Eli's portrait, to see if any of the receptionists had seen him around. Due to privacy concerns, most people didn't want to answer any of my questions. I assured them I didn't want his room number, only if he had been spotted safe and sound recently. After that, people tended to go along saying they hadn't seen him but would make a note if they did. At least that line of questioning killed some time. When it started to get late in the day, the bars opened. I wanted to hit each location before it got too busy and prayed the staff that had worked last night would be working again. Everyone turned out to be pretty helpful once they knew I was looking for a clueless guy with a worried mother. Some said they saw him in passing, but none knew where he ended up or who he was with. He just got accepted into groups by paying for drinks, and then moved on. The bartenders only remembered Eli because of how he looked. Aside from being handsome, they could all sense there was something off about him. It gave them conflicted feelings. Everyone who had an interaction with him got the impression he was a nice guy who wouldn't hurt a fly, but at the same time, he didn't appear natural. Almost like a feeling that he was too perfect and just couldn't be real. I understood their conflicted emotions. Charlotte looked beautiful, and yet I felt like her species ate humans. Even if there hadn't been that many over her lifespan, she was still a predator. Something above us on the food chain. Our bodies knew it by instinct. I thanked each person who gave me scraps of information and moved on to the next bar. I was spending a great deal in taxi fares, but it would be worth it to put Charlotte's mind at ease. It was getting late and I was running out of places to hit up. I felt as if I wasn't really getting anywhere. Nick's words about effort never being wasted kept me going. I got dropped off at a crowded club where you could hear the music blaring, even outside. Not a place I would normally go into, and I wasn't even dressed for a club like this. I assumed the bouncer would toss me out, but I guess I looked as if I wasn't there to cause trouble and got inside. How anyone enjoyed being in clubs was beyond me. I couldn't hear myself think, and could easily feel the music thud in my chest. I struggled through a mass of bodies to get to the bar, hoping I could ask questions over the noise. The place dark, the only lights surrounding the DJ stage were shining in hues of purple and pink. The whole ordeal was really awful. It smelled terrible and I wanted to ask my questions and get out of there as soon as possible. Shouting over the noise, I got the poor overworked bartender's attention. I gave him a tip and struggled to ask him if he'd seen Eli around over the noise in the club. He gave me a puzzled look. I was about to repeat the question thinking he didn't hear me. The man pointed behind me, then went to a very loud and demanding girl screaming for a drink. I turned trying to see what the bartender was pointing at and did a double take. I stared, slack-jawed, thinking it couldn't be this easy. In the middle of the crowd of the dance floor had turned into a mob since the time I had entered the club. Someone was being lifted up. They were cheering while he downed the biggest drink I'd ever seen in one large swig. It was Eli. Honestly, I didn't know how I was going to drag him away from that crowd. I hurried over to try and push through, finding it impossible. This jerk partying away and his poor mother sobbing worrying about him. He could have at least called. I bet he had probably blown through all the cash Charlotte had saved up for him to start his new life away from home in one night. Somehow, I got his attention. Eli directed his perfect face in my direction, looking hazy. When I raised the drawing for him to see, his expression turned a bit sober, knowing the only way I would have that is if I knew his mother. At least he didn't run. Both of us struggled through the crowd. We wanted to get outside, but the way blocked and went to the washrooms instead. The music still thudding, but low enough to hold a conversation. All the stall doors were closed and the place looked disgusting. Eli, do you have any idea how worried your mother is about you? I hissed while keeping a grip on his arm. Eli was swaying a little and had a half grin on his face. His attention kept getting pulled away by something I couldn't see. Don't worry about it. It's only been a few hours. Hey, you want some of these? He was digging around trying to get his hand in his pocket and failing. Are you high? Ugh, it doesn't matter. I'm taking you home. I understand wanting to have fun, but this isn't safe. I tried dragging him, but his feet stayed as if glued to the floor. I was dealing with a half-human after all. He wasn't dangerous in his blissful state, but wouldn't move unless I got him motivated. God, I wished I could just slap him. I could try, but doubted I could do enough damage to knock any sense into whatever hidden under all the drugs and booze he took. I wondered what I could do. Lure him away with promises of fast food? I didn't know how to call Charlotte, so I had agreed to meet her where she dropped me off in the morning. But I wasn't just going to leave Eli to ruin himself further. Finally, my words sunk in and a confused look came over his face. He scratched at his straight black hair trying to figure out what I was saying. How isn't this safe? It's just human nonsense. It's not as if any of them can hurt me. And he trailed off, noticing his own reflection. Thinking it was a different person, he smiled and waved at it, then noticed me again and got back on his train of thought. Oh, right. All this stuff wears off so fast. I can take whatever I want and have fun. No problem. It's just fun. Mother was always going on about hunters, but I'll just chomp them. To my horror, Eli's face shifted. It was no longer perfect with handsome features, but twisted into a monstrous face with a mouth so wide it unhinged at his ears. Eyes lined his forehead and cheeks, looking a bit drunk but still dangerous. His hands wrapped around my shoulders, keeping me in place as I let out a yelp of fear, trying to push away. Each hand looking as if it should belong to a ball-jointed doll instead of a human. He shut his mouth twice with an audible snap, while he made cartoonish chomping sounds. He was giggling, making his appearance seem a smidge less threatening. Eli wasn't going to eat my face, he was only showing me that he could do it to anyone who tried to harm him. He might be able to defend himself against a regular human, but I feared he wouldn't stand a chance against a hunter. I'd only heard about them and had never met one before. They were on par with the corporation despite being run solely by humans. Eli a half-breed and high as a kite. He wouldn't be able to deal with someone trying to hunt him down. I pushed my hand against his cheek, trying to get him away while not poking his eyes out, and angrily telling him he should not be showing that face in public. I now wonder if I had used up all my good luck by finding Eli so quickly. I thought about the horrible outcome that would result if a hunter came across Eli, but never imagined it would actually happen. As I tried to talk some sense into Eli, a man about our age walked into the washroom. He froze, staring at us. My mind was racing as I tried to explain what was going on and if I could even attempt to play this all off. In a flash, the man's hands went to under his jacket, which was not at all appropriate for the weather, and he pulled out a black rod as he charged at Eli. When he slammed it down on his shoulder, a burst of electricity flew out, but it strangely didn't harm me. Eli got blown back, knocked out from that single hit but not dead. I acted slowly out of shock. The man assumed he saved me from nearly being eaten, and if I was smarter, I would have played it off like that. Instead, I rushed over to Eli to check on him, looking him over to see if he was alright. The hunter who thought just saved an innocent human looked disgusted by my concern. "How dare you go over to their side?" the man shouted, his face twisted in rage. I threw up my arms trying to defend myself. This man didn't need any special magic weapons. He just needed one well-placed punch to my face to knock me out cold. In my defense, he was someone who devoted their life to training to fight supernatural creatures. It was only natural I would get knocked out so fast. When I woke up, my head was throbbing and I certain my nose was broken again. Dried blood stuck my shirt to my chest. How this hunter got both Eli and myself out of the club without drawing attention to himself a mystery. My head still hazy, I tried moving, only to find out my arms tied down. It took a few minutes to clear my head and look around. The room looked to be an old warehouse converted into a living space. Where the hunter that took us had cluttered desks and workspaces filling the space. Each desk covered in items to craft supernatural weapons. Most were body parts from creatures. A massive clawed hand hung from one table and my stomach dropped. Was Eli safe? I frantically looked around the room and finally spotted him, tied up but alive, in the middle of a circle drawn on the cement flooring. He looked sober, and met my gaze. His face looking terrified and yet sorry that he dragged a second person into all this. Before I could call out to him, the hunter returned. He sneered when he noticed we both were awake. "Please, let Eli go. He's not dangerous." "Just stupid," I said quickly. The man who kidnapped us didn't want to listen. His face colored in rage over how a human was defending a creature. I'd heard hunters hated creatures of the night, but never really realized what that meant. "Not dangerous? Every creature is dangerous and should not be allowed to live," he spat, looking disgusted. I stared at him, my chest hurting from fear. Whatever happened to this hunter in the past must have been terrible for him to have this kind of outlook. Overall, he had a kind face under the cruel expression that was currently on it. He didn't look to be the type to go out hunting monsters. If that was the case, wouldn't humans be wiped out? I've seen some terrible creatures, but also I was cut off from trying to reason with him when the hunter walked over and grabbed the front of my shirt. They only let us live for food. We are nothing to them. The only reason why our world is this way is because they let it be. I am not going to keep letting this happen, and I cannot forgive anyone who sides with them. He shouted, but his voice wavered a little. A sadness under his rage. I couldn't move and felt helpless. Honestly, I should hate this man but couldn't bring myself to do so. I just wanted to figure out a way to get Eli back to his mother. The hunter shoved me aside to pace around the desks looking at the half-finished weapons. "I'm going to use this creature to create weapons to kill his kind. These weapons can backfire. I needed someone to test them out on but never came across someone insane enough to side with monsters. You'll do just fine. Hell, you might redeem yourself by dying while I test these weapons so I can kill more creatures." That explained why this man took both of us. I assumed he took Eli to pull any magic from his body, but didn't know why I got dragged along. Eli had heard stories about hunters, so he knew what to expect when being captured by one. Eli only grew frantic when he heard I might be killed. He struggled, trying to get to the edge of the circle, sweating but unable to move further. "Please, let this man go. I don't even know his name. My mother asked him to find me, that's all. He's not a part of anything, he's just doing his job." He begged, and I thought a little better of him. The hunter wasn't moved in the slightest. He walked over and easily crossed into the circle to kick Eli to the ground. He forced the half-breed down with his foot, pressing Eli's face into the cement. I shouted at him to stop, and that didn't help my case at all. "There are wards to keep this place safe from your kind. However, if you call for your monster of a mother, I may consider letting this human go." "What is it going to be? Let a human die because of your mistake, or let your mother die?" We all knew the choice Eli was going to make. His face reflected his agony over being made to make one. He had ran off, just wanting to blow off steam, and now he would be torn apart to create weapons and had dragged another person down with him. I needed to think of something. I looked around, trying to see if there might be something within arm's reach I could grab with my hands tied behind my back. Eli may be half monster, but he got overpowered by magic. Our only hope was if the hunter underestimated me and left something nearby I could use. I doubted we could talk ourselves out of this mess. I felt my cell phone in my pocket but couldn't reach it. Even if I could, unless the hunter left us alone, I couldn't call for help without drawing his attention. I work for the corporation. I don't think they would approve of you killing one of their agents. I bluffed. It was a little bit of a lie. I wasn't an agent, but I did work with them. I knew Ankar would love it if I died here. I didn't ask Nick for help on this case and regretted that. It should have been an easy case. If I lived and he found out, I'm sure he would be very upset with me. I know who are agents and you're. The hunter's words were cut off by a loud cracking sound and the entire building shaking. It felt like a bomb went off. Half-finished weapons fell from the desks, rolling to the floor. He fell over, no longer pinning Eli down. The half-spider still wasn't able to leave the circle. The hunter scrambled to his feet, looking as scared as I felt. He dove to grab a weapon, just as the large doors on the other side of the building were kicked in so hard that they flew across the room, taking out everything in their path. Instead of a sword or a dagger, the hunter grabbed a piece of paper with circles and writing on it to face the creature that charged inside. I didn't recognize the monster that tore across the room, tossing desks aside effortlessly. I should have from the spider body, but she looked so terrifying I just couldn't see this creature as the same kind and worried mother I'd met hours earlier. Her long hair moved like extra hands, ripping apart the room as her legs sped along the ground. Every eye glowed a deep purple inside black sockets. A mouth opened so wide it could swallow a person's head whole. Another mouth was open vertically down her chest. It started at her collarbone and ended where her human half met her spider one. The spider woman screamed loud enough to break glass, causing me to flinch and shut my eyes in pain. She should have attacked the hunter, but instead she stopped in front of him, her eyes looking at Eli and then at me. In a split second, Charlotte went from her extra monstrous form to the version I'd seen earlier. The hunter stunned as she dragged the tip of her foot across the circle drawn on the floor, breaking it to free Eli. She tore the ropes from him and pressed her son into a tight hug. I was so worried. I thought you were dead, Charlotte cried out, her eyes wet. How did you find this place? The hunter asked, still stunned. I put a tracking spell on Skylar. She replied, not taking her eyes off of Eli. The hunter turned to me, his face twisted in rage. He then faced Charlotte, piece of paper in the air to get her attention. I didn't know what the paper did, but didn't like that he grabbed it instead of a more dangerous looking weapon. This is a very powerful spell. It'll kill all of us if I let go of it. Walk away and I may consider letting you live. He warned, his hand shaking a little. The threat was valid. He wanted to take us all down with him if needed. But he didn't look very keen on the idea. My mind racing. Charlotte was strong, but I didn't think she could stop the spell unless she knew the exact wording. The man kept a thumb over the last word, making it certain she wouldn't be able to read it and think of a way around the spell. It will kill the three of you. I can survive if that spell goes off. I've fought with you hunters before and have gone through the same thing. Your death would be a waste, but please, even if you don't care about your own life, don't take my son away. Her tone was calm and kind. She turned her full attention onto the hunter and carefully placed Eli behind her large body. I knew it hurt her to not comfort her son but instead face the one threatening to kill all of us. I noticed a small knife that had landed nearby. While they spoke, I started to move slowly towards it, trying not to get their attention. Why the hell would I ever listen to a monster like you? My life would be well worth it if I can use it to kill a creature and the one who sided with them. My only regret would be that I couldn't kill more of you as revenge for my family. The hunter ranted. His hand shifted and my heart froze. I tensed, expecting death, but Charlotte stopped the hunter with her soft tone. Her hands were raised as if she was dealing with a wild, dangerous animal. In her eyes, maybe she was. What happened to your family? She asked, taking a very small step closer, causing the hunter to step back. He stuttered, never expecting a creature to ask with such genuine concern. He regained his rage and shouted back at her. They were torn apart. Something heartless like yourself slaughtered them. I was expecting to have a happy Christmas, but came home to a house of blood and horror. I swore on that day I would kill as many of you as I can to ensure that never happened to anyone else again. His voice trembling from the memory of his past. Have you ever heard something so tragic it almost became a comedy? I was tied up, a man threatening us all with a magic bomb and my only hope a spider mother. Hearing that this hunter had the most tragic past imaginable almost made me want to laugh at how absurd the entire situation turned into. I only inhaled and bit the inside of my mouth to keep everything from spilling out. I'd never been scared to death but also on the verge of laughing before. Neither of them noticed my emotional turmoil as Charlotte kept pressing, trying to talk the man down. I don't want my son to die, but I may be able to forgive you if you're able to answer this question. Does hunting creatures make you happy? Are you content when you kill one of us, or do you just keep hating us? Is there ever going to be an end to all of this? She asked, still trying to close the distance between the two of them. As long as there are creatures alive, I'll still hate and hunt them until it kills me, he yelled, his face red. Is this what your family would have wanted? Charlotte asked. That question almost got us all killed. He screamed in rage and charged at her, snatching up a dagger off the table. He tried stabbing it into her chest stomach with one hand still on the paper bomb. The blade broke against Charlotte's skin. Instead of attacking back, she reached down to wrap her human arms around the hunter in an embrace that he struggled against. Eli's brothers and sisters were all killed by hunters. He was a sickly baby, so I had left with him to get treatment the day they slaughtered my children. They deemed my species unworthy to live because we take a human male's life to create children. I killed the ones who took my children. I'd forgotten my task of trying to get free in order to watch their exchange. I never would have thought Charlotte and the hunter had suffered through the same thing at one point. He shook his head, trying to not let her words affect him, but he wasn't trying to get free from her arms. You're still. My life is only worthy if I can kill creatures who would harm others. You still kill humans. I cannot forgive any of you for what you've done. He replied, but his voice was losing some strength. I really do dislike the hunter organization. They take hurt humans like yourself and force you down a never-ending road of revenge. This life is never going to make you happy. You'll just die alone. I realized that too late. I did kill the hunters who wronged my family, but I stopped myself before I took it too far. I could have kept killing, but there isn't any point to that. More people would be harmed by my actions, and it feeds into the never-ending cycle. You may be threatening my son's life, but I understand why and I forgive you. The hunter tried to move away, but Charlotte kept her grip tight. She wasn't trying to grab the spell, but instead held the man as if he was part of the family she'd lost. I can't forgive you creatures. I have to keep going. I have to, or else everything I've done is going to be for nothing. While those two were speaking, Eli sneaked over to me. He used a dagger to cut me loose. I feared the movement would get the attention of the hunter. He appeared confused, but hadn't given up on his suicide mission yet. When Charlotte released the man, he looked far too distressed to move. She gently took his face in her hand so they could make eye contact. I didn't blame the hunter for not being able to pull away after seeing her expression. It's not all worthless. You're still alive, and we got to meet each other, she said with a soft smile on her normally terrifying face. I think it would be less painful if she outright attacked the hunter instead of treating him so gently. He could deal with the idea of all the creatures being monsters that must be killed. Not with the idea that some did harm humans, but at the same time could be as kind-hearted as a saint. He kept opening his mouth trying to respond, only to find himself at a loss for words. After Charlotte let her hands drop, the hunter looked down at the paper spell in his hand. Unable to go through with his threat, he tore the paper, breaking the circle and the spell. The stress in my shoulders only released when the paper dropped to the ground and the hunter gazed down, looking broken. He might have been giving Charlotte a chance to go back on her words and harm him. It would be easier for him to accept a creature was being nice only to attack him after the threat had passed. My face was still throbbing in pain. At least we weren't at risk of dying anytime soon, and Eli had learned his lesson. I turned to him, really wanting to be angry over how he acted. In the end, the only negative outcome was the hunter breaking my nose. If Charlotte could forgive the one who nearly killed her son, I could forgive him for that. Your mom is really nice, I said, finally breaking the silence between the two of us. Yeah. I thought everyone only liked her because she. You know. Eli started to move his hands over his chest trying to get his point across, being unable to outright mention his mother's obvious attributes. I punched his arm. That a noticeable thing, but he should never mention it. And I was still bitter about my nose. He got another punch because he flinched from the first one. Charlotte gathered us all up so she could get me some treatment and a clean shirt that wasn't stained in my own blood. She also took along the hunter, who finally introduced himself as Matthew. He was so out of it he was just doing whatever she asked. Honestly, I didn't know what she might do with him. He couldn't return to being a hunter after sympathizing with a monster. If he almost killed me for being concerned over Eli, if other hunters found out about tonight, they would do the same to him. The entire thing bothered me. For a while, I didn't know the outcome. A week after Charlotte hired me, I got a letter from her asking to meet in the park just to give me an update, figuring I may be curious. We met after dark. We were an odd-looking group and I was glad no one was around. I still got goosebumps just seeing her spider half. I dealt with it enough to walk over and greet Eli and Matthew. I received an embarrassed apology from Matthew for punching me in the face. In the past week, Charlotte somehow got this man to change his mind about what pushed him forward to kill. I really didn't know how she did it. I still think there are a lot of creatures who are a danger for humans, but I can see how wrong it was to just target everyone I'd come across. The hunters will kill me if they can, but Charlotte is going to use her power to protect me. I'm going to use my skills in crafting weapons for the corporation, so call me if you need anything. The now ex-hunter explained. I honestly felt a little bit proud of Matthew. He was still doing his best to ensure no one went through what he did, but also wasn't putting his life needlessly at risk doing so. Matthew also agreed to stay with me to show me how the human world works so I can go off on my own at some point. I don't know what I can do, but I hope to join the corporation someday. Eli announced. If I kept working with Nick, then maybe someday I would do a case with Eli. I hoped he had smartened up by then. Charlotte's eyes got misty again. This time it was because of how proud she was of the two of them. Unable to help it, she pulled them into a tight, embarrassing hug. Both protested. I snickered, and in revenge her arms turned on me next. I thought I was going to suffocate and nearly did before she finally pulled back. I still owe you for this job. Don't be afraid to call on me for anything. Because you heard me out, you saved Eli and brought Matthew to us. I don't know how I'll ever pay you back, but I'll try. Charlotte had a talent for embarrassing full-grown men. I exchanged numbers with Matthew, in case I planned on getting a magic sword at some point. I also got Eli's number just so he could practice using a cell phone with someone, or so he could ask a human questions in case Matthew got too busy. They all needed to be somewhere else and left shortly after the number exchange. I waved as they all started down the park pathway. Charlotte's legs clicking against the stone path. As I watched them leave, I considered how I felt about supernatural creatures. When I first found out about them, I'd assumed most acted like the witch in the woods. Just downright evil creatures killing humans and that they needed to be taken out. Since then, I knew each creature were very different from each other. Some wouldn't harm anything, while others would do harm in order to live. There were also a few that had no redeeming qualities. It all felt complicated. Somehow, knowing all this nearly scared me more than if all the monsters in the dark were only just that. It was a very frightening idea that I could care so deeply for something that could kill me. I think I loved Charlotte a little, and yet I was scared of her. In fact, I loved a lot of the creatures I'd met in some sort of way. I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to make sense of my feelings while standing alone in a dark park. In the end, I headed back home thinking I didn't need to figure out my feelings yet. I could just carry on working and dealing with whatever came my way on a case-by-case basis. I work as a PI and a government agent approached me to help with a case. Part 16. Something happened that I had never expected. I got invited to a dinner party along with Nick. I had to call him to ask if the invitation was real. I had never heard of the name and didn't have a clue on why someone would want me at a fancy party. He was unsure as well, so we both agreed it might be related to work. My wardrobe was sorely lacking for a party that matched the fancy invitation. Nick assured me that just a button-down shirt and dress pants would be fine. All of it strange, but credible. The next weekend, I somewhat dressed up and ready to go when Nick came to pick me up for the party. He wore just in his usual suit and the orchestra at his hip. We doubted he would need it, but he brought it anyway. In a few minutes, we arrived at a mansion at the top of a hill thanks to a transportation charm he had received. I wondered how many different places in the world I'd been to by now without even knowing it. As Nick knocked on the large wooden doors, I looked around the yard. This place had peacocks wandering around and bushes fashioned into animals. I'd only seen stuff like that in movies and assumed it because it was so tacky no one did such things anymore. Judging from all the expensive cars parked off to the side, we were the last ones to arrive. The door creaked open, spilling light onto the dark front yard. We were greeted by the last person I ever thought to see, and yet very happy to meet again. "Luna, what are you doing here?" I asked, as the child let out a shriek of delight and jumped into my arms. I had received some letters saying how well Luna was doing, but we hadn't been able to meet again since the time when had we rescued them from a hunter lab. Small arms nearly choked me to death as Luna hugged my neck. "I didn't know you would be here either." To my shock, Luna talked. Pride welled up in my chest. Luna dressed in a frilly silver outfit that matched their hair. Because they didn't have a gender, they pretty much wore anything they wanted. Nick gave the child a small wave, and Luna gave him a narrowed eye look that hurt my partner a little even if his face didn't show it. It appeared Luna hadn't fully forgiven Nick for being ready to kill them on sight during that case. It would take a bit longer for them to fully get along. I finally had to put the child down as we went inside to be introduced to the others who arrived and to see what exactly was going on. In the front room stood a table with name cards. Most I didn't recognize, but Nick's name was displayed above a feathered eye mask. Almost like a carnival one. Red feathers stood up from the side. He picked it up to examine it, to find it completely normal. Everyone else here brought along a bodyguard of sorts. All the guards have to wear a mask for some reason. I think it makes it easier for everyone who haven't met yet to know who the important person is on site or something. Luna explained as Nick silently placed the mask on his face, and with a few adjustments he got it to fit. It was very hard not to laugh at him. Luna had been the first person to arrive, saying their caretakers would be there at some point. Which, to our surprise, would be us. The rest of the people who came in pairs were pretty important in the supernatural culture. They demanded respect, so not knowing them on site was a grave offense. I suppose that all made sense as to why we were there. An agent would just be an extra layer of protection when it came to a dinner party of the rich and important creatures. The corporation must really be short on agents if the only ones they could spare were me and Nick. I feel really underdressed for all of this. Even the orchestra hilt is all done up. I commented as I looked over at Nick's sword, which had a sparkling set of diamonds hanging from a chain on the delicate hilt. It said it wanted to wear something nice too, Nick said looking down. How come it didn't come in a fancy new sheath then? I guess a plain black one is fine, but... I stopped speaking due to the look Nick gave me under his mask. Luna did a double take at the sword, then at me, as if they were realizing a terrible fact. I was confused about their reactions. The sheath is brown. Did you mean the scabbard? Nick suggested. I felt my face flush as I looked at the brown leather belt that kept the sword at his waist. I'd mixed up the two words, thinking one was the other. I must not have said that mistake out loud in front of him before, or else he would have corrected me. I dreaded how many times I'd mentally mixed them up in the past. In my defense, I don't own a sword. Why would I know what everything on them is called? I said, trying to defend myself. Because swords are cool. Luna replied as if that was the most obvious fact ever. I can't believe I was being looked down on by someone who only came to my waist. We had spent enough time in the front room, so Luna led us to where the rest of the guests were gathered. Each pair standing a little away from each other in a large sitting room. A fireplace the main light source in the room. Being human, I would not know about any of these creatures, and they all appeared mostly human. I felt eyes on us as we arrived into the room, and no one appeared eager to talk. I felt very out of place. Luna took my hand, noticing how I was feeling. In the corner of the room, a man stood looking through the books on the shelves. His bodyguard wore a mask with black feathers to match his employer's hair color. That's the eldest son of the Nightshade family. They mostly deal in velvet bat farms. I think he might be the nicest out of everyone in this room. Luna explained, as I looked at the pair. The Nightshade's son had straight black hair down to the floor. He was wearing a solid black robe, and a pair of bat wings arched from his back and increased his height. His guard appeared subdued compared to the man. Shorter and appeared human, besides having dark furred clawed hands at his sides. He didn't pay us any attention, which did make him the nicest person. The rest of them looked over, with thinly veiled disgust at the only human in the room. Oh, you must be the temporary human that has been spoken about. Is the corporation really that desperate for help nowadays? Came a smooth voice near the back of the room. Sitting in a chair near the window was an older man dressed in such a sharp suit it could cut glass. I always assumed a well-fitted suit looked the same no matter how much you spent on it, but he proved me wrong. Rings glittered on each finger, and long golden chains dangled from his pointed ears. Aside from his deep purple eyes and those ears, he almost looked human. His guard was wearing a white feathered mask that matched his flowing white hair. Under that mask was a beautiful face that didn't match his plain white clothing. I offered to be a contract worker for the cash. Not everyone is born with money. Some of us need to work for what we got instead of it being handed to us. I shot back, and a wave of suppressed snickers came through the room. Even Nightshade looked up from his books. It was clear no one had the nerve to talk back to the man sitting in the chair. He must be the richest person there. The other two pairs looked between us, expecting an argument. A woman with fiery red hair by the fireplace grabbed their guard's shoulder with a smile on her face. It was obvious she wanted to watch some drama. When the guard wearing white took 2 steps forward, Nick moved as well. My partner instantly in front of me, hand at the ready to draw his weapon. The one sitting reached over to take a fistful of his bodyguard's hair to pull him back. I winced at the sight, as the man kept a straight face and tried to stay standing still as his employer tugged. That pest is only human. Are you suggesting we need to react to their useless words? He said to his guard in a low voice that showed just how cruel he could be. A tense few seconds passed until he let go of the other man's hair and started to completely ignore us as if we were nothing. Nick also straightened up, feeling as if the danger passed. The two women felt let down from the anticlimactic reactions. Luna silently asked to be picked up, so I bent over to take them into my arms. That man is the oldest son of the Webb family. They deal in silk, Luna whispered, hoping no one else could hear. That explained why I automatically hated the man across the room. Aside from being a stuck-up snob, he was connected to spiders in some way. Apparently supernatural silk was created mostly by spider creatures instead of any other insects. The red-haired woman came over, a hunter's smile over her face. She was attractive and she knew it. Necklaces with countless gems covered her chest where her red dress didn't. Her lips were painted a red that would look tacky on anyone else. I'm Elizabeth. My family provides the gunpowder and other explosives for the corporation. I'm certain you have heard of us. Her voice was a bit strained as if she was trying to sound more mature than she appeared. Sorry, we don't know anyone here. I'm human and kinda clueless on the supernatural side of things, and Nikki uses swords. I explained. There was a chance Luna knew what family this woman belonged to. This kid had been studying and didn't have information held back from them, unlike myself. A lot of answers weren't for human ears. Oh? I thought your partner could have been an agent I heard of. A real sharpshooter that used a bunch of our special-made bullets to take care of big cases. Really did a lot for us and I was hoping to thank him if you were him. Same hair color, but I suppose you're not him. He had a female partner. Elizabeth spoke and waved a hand to signal she really didn't care what she was talking about but only mentioned it to show off. Her bodyguard towered over her wearing a black suit with a mask of yellow feathers. He looked tough, but I felt as if the man sitting by the window was stronger. Elizabeth just trying to look good by appearances. Every aspect of her image made to impress. I doubted I could get along with any of these people. I am not talented when it comes to firearms. I shall pass your thanks along and hopefully it will find the person it's meant for. Nick commented, not at all fazed by the beautiful woman standing in front of him. When she tucked her arm under her chest making her necklaces shift, my eyes were drawn to the glittering mess. Then I flushed over just how low her dress shifted and quickly looked away. Nick was a saint for not looking down with that view practically in his face. The last set of people sat down in some chairs near the front of the room. A woman in a long oriental pastel yellow dress rolled her eyes at Elizabeth. They'd been at different dinners together and she got tired of the desperate acts Elizabeth put on to get attention. A horn of crystal grew from her forehead and her eyes were a solid shining light blue. Her name is Clear. I think her family provides all the gemstones everyone is wearing, Luna whispered, as the redhead fluttered her eyelashes at Nick, with no effect. Clear's guard looked similar to her. The mask of blue feathers was adjusted around his clear crystal horn. Clear the type to watch from the sidelines. If she wasn't, she might have been getting Elizabeth going. A bell rang through the room. I wasn't aware of the fact that was the sign for dinner. Clear and her guard left the room first. Elizabeth tried to take Nick's hand but he turned away just in time. It was hard to tell if it was on purpose. Feeling a bit offended, she left with footsteps a bit too heavy. We stepped aside for Webb and his guard, meekly following behind. Nightshade made no motion of moving. I carried Luna out of the room, following the group down a long hallway covered with heavy red carpet. Nick stayed in front of us in case Webb wanted to start something. I felt a hand on my shoulder and jumped a little, not expecting it. Human, may I ask you something? Nightshade crept up behind us. A large hand with long fingers kept a grip on my shoulder as we walked. His wispy low voice made my skin crawl. His intense eyes stared into my soul, but for some reason Luna wasn't startled. I nodded, letting him speak. Do you know where I can obtain books that are pink? A few I have recovered have a pink spine. They have adults in very intimate situations. Some have supernatural creatures. I greatly enjoy them but cannot find them very often. He explained, hunched down to match my pace. I think they're called Harlequins, or published by that company. The used library store nearby my place sells bags for $2. I replied, thinking back to the discount bargain bins that pretty much gave away those books. Nightshade's eyes got even more intense. His mouth grew larger and nails grew longer. At first it was as if I said something wrong, but a small smile at the corners of his mouth came. He was very excited for that information. Could you purchase some? I shall reimburse you for the books and for the effort. His voice got even darker with his offer. Sure. We'll figure out a way to contact you after dinner, I said, a little hesitant on the offer. He nodded his head and let my shoulder go. As I walked, he drifted back to his bodyguard and whispered to each other loud enough for me to hear. The guard was questioning Nightshade if he was able to ask me about getting the books. A high five rang out and they excitedly giggled. Okay, maybe there might be a good pair in this bunch. We arrived to a large dining room with a large long table in the middle. Webb already taken the seat on the end regardless of if it was his spot or not. I noticed right away that there were not enough chairs for everyone. None of us really had a conversation about the purpose of the night. I never asked who planned this dinner, just assumed it was a case. You could tell whoever was running things was loaded. The crystal centerpieces cost more than what I currently had in savings, never mind how much the plates and glasses cost. Before everyone sat down, a figure flickered to one side of the room, getting everyone's attention. We prepared meals for your helpers in the other room. Only the ones with their names listed shall eat here. After dinner we arranged a short play to end the night. The person who suddenly appeared looked to be a girl wearing a pristine maid's outfit. She looked strange. A little too bright for the room and none of the candle light reflected on her face. I glanced at her feet to see them not really connecting to the ground as she flickered away again. It's like a hologram, Luna said, explaining why the maid didn't appear real. I then turned to Nick, not wanting him to be in a different room. My name listed along with Luna's on a place setting on the table. Nick looked ridiculous with that mask on, and that almost made me relax a bit. Yell if anything happens. I'll come right away. This was approved by the corporation, so I am not overly worried about being separated. He told me, as the rest of the group got seated. He was right. An uneasy feeling was still in my stomach, but this appeared to only be an awkward dinner. Nothing more than that. I didn't know how I would survive being at the table alone with a handful of very rich supernatural creatures. Luna took my hand to remind me I wasn't alone in all this. Nick the last one to leave through the far door following the rest of the bodyguards, and I was the last one to sit down. I helped Luna get on the chair that had a pillow on it to help get them to table height. Without her helper, Elizabeth was having issues pulling her chair in. The legs kept getting stuck on the carpet. I helped her while trying to be discreet in the motion. Any sign of weakness would be like blood in the water with this group. When I got settled, different bowls of a starter soup appeared from thin air in front of everyone. No one wanted to start up a conversation. Since the bowls were so small, the ones eating finished it off fairly quickly to have a main meal appear. Again, each meal with different for each person, to suit their species and tastes. I helped Luna cut some chicken breast as the cutlery provided was too large for them, when Clear finally spoke up. Does anyone know the purpose of this meeting? Most of our families have connections with each other. I was told to attend and I assume it's the same for you all, but was not told anything more than that. She said exactly what I had been thinking about for a while. Nightshade politely eating, not wanting to bother to join in the conversation. There was something on his plate he clearly found too bitter from his expressions, but didn't leave anything behind as he ate whatever in front of him. Webb kept his arms crossed, not touching anything. I think it's to have us be a bit more friendly to each other. Or a possible first meeting to pick who we would like to marry. There are an equal number of males to females after all. Elizabeth mentioned, not at all taking me and Luna into account. Clear picked at her dish while Elizabeth looked hungry and yet didn't touch anything. Her eyes fluttered over to Webb with a look she may have thought to be seductive. She really only saw his sharp suit and family connections. I doubted she would actually enjoy being married to him, and yet she would try her hardest to get his attention. Oh? I see you're looking over to our lovely Webb with stars in your eyes. Being the youngest of your family, I am unaware of what you have to offer. Nightshade is far more suitable for you, Clear said with a shrug, wanting to get her rival heated. I'm not interested in any of that. I only wish to spend time with my books. I have many brothers you can fall back on if Webb is not interested. The man pointed out while hunched over his plate. And what about the agents? What is the reason for them to be here? Webb finally spoke from the front of the table. We haven't been told either. But you are all very high-profile people. Being all in one place might attract some unwanted attention. Having some agents around may as well be to provide some protection in case anyone tries to kill one of you. You all have some enemies, right? I suggested. They all nodded except for Webb. Arms still crossed, he studied the human at the same table. It was clear I could do nothing if something did try and attack. I held his eye contact even while Luna's arm sneakily reached over to lift my wine glass. I moved it out of the small finger's grasp and next to Elizabeth. She had already finished her drink. Her eyes darting towards my untouched one. Can a human do anything at all? Webb responded, a small grin on his face that showed off perfect sharp teeth. He can cut food, which is a skill our Elizabeth does not seem to own. Clear commented as she jumped on the chance to poke fun at the other woman. Elizabeth's face turned as red as her hair for a few seconds. She grabbed my offered wine glass, slamming the drink down in one gulp huffily. Her grip so strong on the crystal glass she may well break it. There was going to be a fight, and I'm in the middle of it. Nick's name would be called soon if this came to blows. At least I can pick out my own clothing and dress myself. Elizabeth snipped back. I started to stand up to either grab Luna out of the way, or to hold back one of the girls before they tore each other's throats out. The whole situation was saved by the most unexpected person. Since one person had finished their main meal, their plate switched to a dessert. Some sort of chocolate ball cracked open, distracting the two girls with the noise. Fudge poured out and he carefully tried some. I swear under his long black hair his cheeks got a little red from how happy the taste made him. "The dessert is nice," Nightshade said in a calm voice, and it diffused tempers. The two girls called a truce so they could finish their dessert. Thankfully Webb didn't appear interested in keeping them going in a fight, or in much of anything. I hadn't really eaten much. The whole scene was so stressful I was unable to stomach the free meal. Luna being so small and given such a large portion, nearly most of their meal got fashioned in the shape of a crude sailboat on a mashed potato sea. Finishing off a bowl of ice cream looked to be no issue though. Webb silently stood up to leave the room and no one stopped him. None of us worth his time and I was glad he left. My cheesecake topped with strawberries almost going to be untouched until I noticed how everyone was eyeing it. I got in their good graces by dividing it up to the four still at the table. Supernatural creatures really were easy to buy their affection with food. I got the sense Elizabeth and Clear both saw me a little bit above a worthless human after the generous gift.